Hello and welcome to the Cyborg here at the StarCityGames.com Open Series in Indianapolis, Indiana. I'm Ken Crocker here with Kent Ketter. Kent, how you doing?
Good, good.
So Kent, you're here with what at one point I believe I saw you call the most powerful deck in Standard.
Yes.
Green-black dragons.
Yes.
All right, so you play a bunch of green creatures, a bunch of black spells, and then dragons.
Yes.
I mean, it can't be any more self-explanatory than that, right?
That is the deck. That's it.
I mean, we're done. I guess. No, we'll go over it. We'll go over it.
It's a little bit more to it than that.
All right. So the green creatures we have mostly for utility and for mana ramp purposes.
Correct.
So your mana guys pretty much are Sylvan Caryatid and Satyr Wayfinder, but Satyr Wayfinder is a little more to that in this deck, right?
Yes. So Wayfinder is really interesting because with the Haven in the deck, in the later games, instead of just having your Wayfinder hit a Scryland, which is like, okay, whatever, you get to hit a regrowth effect.
Sure.
And buy back all of these lovely dragons that you've placed in your graveyard.
Speaking of getting things out of the graveyard, another utility creature we play, Den Protector, green staple at this point, and you got the Deathmist Raptor combo. So how many times are you really getting back dragons with the Den Protector, or are you really just trying to get utility out of them?
Most of the time with the Den Protector, you're actually getting back the Thoughtseize.
Okay.
By far the best card in the deck to get back. For 6 mana, you can play, flip, and Thoughtseize them.
Sure.
And against the control decks, that sequence is fairly good. Beyond that, Den Protector tends to get removal spells. I would definitely say I rely more on the Havens, but Den Protector is more than happy to get back Atarka in the aggressive matchups, or Dromoka always.
Sure.
Every time.
And then the black spells, they're like the standard staples, right?
100%.
You said you got 3 Thoughtseize main, 1 on the board.
Yes.
We got a couple Murderous Cuts.
Yep.
Hero's Downfall. And then we only have like 1 Foul Tongue Invocation. So why only 1 in the main?
So the deck, since we're not necessarily very controlling, we can't kill all of the small creatures, no sweepers. So against the decks with Wayfinder or Caryatids, Foul Tongue's pretty bad.
Sure.
But against the control decks, the Esper Dragon variants and the more mid-rangey decks, it's reasonable, but I felt like with our strategy and our creatures being so powerful, I needed to be able to select my removal targets with Downfall and Cut versus just kind of the catch-all reasonable card that is Foul Tongue.
Okay.
For the main deck.
For the main deck.
Yes.
We'll get to the sideboard momentarily.
Absolutely.
And then finally, the Dragon package, the whole reason the deck exists.
Yes.
So,
the best part of the deck.
So 2 Dromoka.
Yep.
3 Ojutai, 1 Silumgar, and 2 Atarka. Now these are all Dragon Lords.
All Dragon Lords.
First and foremost, where's Dragon Lord Kolaghan?
He is terrible. Oh, I'm sorry. Dragon Lord Kolaghan is not what the deck's looking for. Providing my creatures with haste is not really something that I need. I'm much happier to play. I want my dragons to either have an immediate effect when they come into play, be it Atarka and Silumgar, or be super annoying for my opponent to deal with Ojutai and Dromoka. Many people forget that with Dromoka, while yes, I do have to play it, pass the turn, get the turn back to get the lifelink, just being able to play it and guarantee a combat step many times is a fantastic way to take down a game. I understand they can cast things in response, but you feel like your attack steps are a lot more safe because I can cast tricks, you can't. Your opponents can almost never double block. And then if Dromoka lives, it's probably the best dragon in the deck.
Probably just game over at that point.
Even the control decks have a hard time with it. I mean, because they can't counter it.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll run them out of the removal spells.
Fair enough. And one of the lovely things about the deck is you still do get to attack with Deathmist Raptor and Den Protector.
Yes.
And anyone who's trying to run Crux of Fate against you has to make that choice, right?
Yes. Crux is an interesting card. I actually considered running one in the main deck. I originally had 4 Den Protectors. That's what Mihara had been playing in Japan. Jerry Thompson had continued with the 4 Den Protectors. But I felt like with a lot of the aggressive decks popping up, it was just a little too slow. So I considered adding a Crux, a Murderous Cut, or a Nether Dragon. I settled on the Murderous Cut just because it makes Wayfinder that much better. Not that it needs help.
I mean, it's pretty good already.
Pretty good. Just most of the time I'm just happy to turn guys sideways.
Fair enough.
Especially with the green creatures. They're all expendable. Every single one. Wayfinder's actually, one thing I realized today is with all the self-inflicted wounds and Foul Tongue invocations,
yeah,
you just let your Wayfinder sit there and your opponents are really forced to spend 2 removal spells.
Pretty much all the edict effects except for like Crackling Doom.
Yes, which is what I was referring to earlier, you know, with the Foul Tongue.
Sure.
So.
And then you do have the sideboard. So the sideboard, we have 3 additional Haven targets, I guess we'll call them.
Yes.
Because you have another Dragonlord Solemnguard, another Dragonlord Dromoka, and Ugin. So why Ugin? Well, I mean, just because...
Ugin was a catch-all for the Devotion matchups.
Okay.
Basically, any of the matchups where I feel like I'm going to fall behind at some point and I need to maybe reset the board. Not quite against red, there's too aggressive, but your Abzan aggros, Bant Heroic, that sort of thing, and Devotion just can't really beat the card. And then it's also just another threat against control. You just, the plan against them is to board in all the threats and board out, things that don't kill them.
Yeah, speaking of control, the rest of the sideboard package, pretty much, except for maybe the ultimate prices, seems like it's kind of control-based because you got 2 Duress.
Yep.
And you got 2 Tasigur, the Golden Thing, and 3 more Foul Tongue. So if you're playing against Esper Dragons, you want to hit the Rototize. Now, you said Tasigur pretty much gets boarded in like every matchup?
Yes, so it was something I realized playing the deck at the Invitational that Tasigur, after board, felt like the best card it could be boarding in. And I talked to a couple people about it, and the realization was many times the Dragon Lords, you want them for their respective effects, and if you get the body, it's great.
Sure.
Tasigur was able to let me remove the Dragon Lords that were underwhelming, like Dragon Lord Silumgar against the decks with removal. Easily board them out, bring in the Tasigurs, and then against the control decks, he always comes in because cast him for 1 mana, tap 4 mana, buy a card back.
Yeah.
You don't lose card advantage there. And that's kind of a theme that the deck takes against the control matchups is it's almost all self-replacing effects. Courser, Den Protector, Wayfinder, Deathmist Raptor, Tasigur, the dragons with Havens. Like there's just a lot of redundancy.
Fair enough.
And so the control decks many times just fall behind.
So you're almost like out card advantaging the control decks almost.
Advantaging card quality, for sure. Yes,
okay.
In the later games, my opponents have like 3 cards in hand and they dig. And there was a combination today earlier where I could not think of a 2-card combination for my opponent off of his dig through time that was going to actually beat me. And that's just because the dragons do so many different things.
So, most powerful deck in Standard, but what deck don't you want to run into?
I don't want to run into the Mulligans.
Okay.
The Mulligan deck.
That's a tough thing to beat.
But generally any decks that don't give me time to establish my plan, while like red is beatable because they're very linear and they're doing the same thing, if they execute their game plan, I'm usually hard-pressed to keep up. The same is for like Bant Heroic if they can protect against Foul Tongue.
Sure.
It's pretty hard to beat them. So just generally the aggressive slanted decks, but that's not to say if they're not able to pressure me adequately before turn 6, once turn 6 hits, the match completely flips.
You get to play dragons.
Dragons.
All right, well, if you're looking for dragons, this is a place to come get it. Kent, thank you for taking the time to side us in from the sideboard. Appreciate it. And you guys stay tuned for more Standard action here in Indianapolis.